readers, I'm Jessie Quinn from Cup of Books and welcome to another Comics Corner. Today I'm going to be talking about more Thor related comics, but first I actually have another magical mug that may in fact grant me superhero powers. This one reads, "Whosoever holds this mug, should they be worthy, shall possess the beauty, badassery, and altogether awesomeness of the Lady Sif." But how can I be worthy of such things? Oh, I know. I'll just review a bunch of comics featuring the Lady Sif. Oh, okay, this is what I'm talking about. During my last Comics Corner, I recommended some comics featuring the mighty Thor, but this week I want to focus on a different character from Asgard, the stunning Lady Sif. For those of you who don't already know, Lady Sif was initially created as another love interest for Thor. I say another because he already had his human love interest, Jane Foster, back on Earth. Now, over the years, some writers have actually tried to write Sif as more than just a love interest. You may be asking yourselves how they attempted such a feat. Well, they just tried to write her as a complex, dynamic character whose life didn't revolve around Thor. It's really not rocket science, people. To start off the recommendations, I want to take this off because it's a little uncomfortable. Being a superhero is hard. To start, I cannot recommend Sif issue 1 highly enough. This one-shot comic was written by Kelly Sue DeConnick, and it is part of a series that Marvel released featuring the women of the Marvel Universe. The reason I love this comic so much is because it confronts the JMS run of Thor head on. Now, some of you may remember from my last Comics Corner that I actually do really like the JMS run of Thor. I highly recommended it in that video. But what I don't like about that run is how Sif gets treated. Thankfully, Sif issue 1 exists. This comic shows us Sif working through what's happened to her, and I think that's absolutely awesome. What I love the most about this comic is the character arc within it. At the beginning, we see Sif feeling vulnerable and understandably angry, and it's through that anger that she discovers her strength and confidence again. And not in a cheesy, you just need to believe in yourself way, but in a way that feels very authentic and genuine to the character. Now, the story itself is a very straightforward rescue mission with the alien superhero Beta Ray Bill making an appearance, and yes, I admit, it's fairly forgettable. But what is memorable about this issue is Sif's character arc. I think it shows just how great this character can be when put in the hands of a competent writer who writes Sif as more than Thor's love interest. While you can read this one-shot on its own, I do believe this issue loses a bit of its impact if you haven't read the JMS run. But if you have read the JMS run, or you're planning on reading the JMS run, you definitely need to put this comic on your list. A few years ago, Thor's half-brother and supervillain Loki died in the comics and was reincarnated as a little kid. I know it sounds weird, just go with it. After he was reincarnated, he was given his own run of the Journey into Mystery series. Now, after the Loki-centric arc wrapped up, Journey into Mystery was handed off to writer Catherine Immonen, and guess who got to be the new main character? That's right, Lady Sif. If you're looking for a comic that has fun character interactions, beautiful artwork, and a badass but adorable protagonist, then look no further than Journey into Mystery featuring the Lady Sif volumes 1 and 2. I cannot recommend this comic highly enough, and I personally feel it got canceled way too soon. Sif as a character really gets the chance to shine here. We get to see her have so much more personality than ever before. She's not only this fierce warrior, this beautiful badass goddess, but she's also kind of a dork, and that's what makes her so likable in this series. It's also a lot of fun to see her interacting with supporting cast from the Thor comics. We get to see her talking with the Warriors 3, interacting with the alien superhero Beta Ray Bill, and we actually get to see her with Thor on occasion. Yes, Thor makes an appearance in this, but when Thor is there, he's a supporting character, as it should be. Perhaps the best character interaction of this entire run, though, would have to be the scene in which Lady Sif reaches out to Jane Foster for help. In fact, I think that scene between Sif and Jane is a good example of what this comic does well. I really loved that we got to see the two women coming together to solve a problem, even if very briefly, because it showed them being allies and not rivals. And yeah, it sounds like such a small thing in storytelling to have two women acting as allies and not rivals, and yet you'd be surprised how rare that can be. I also really liked the way the scene went from really hilarious to really serious without missing a beat. It felt very natural. While I love this run, I will admit it has some flaws. I personally feel like the character Sif needed a stronger introduction. Also, the first story arc, while very action-packed, very fun, was a bit of a slow start. We don't get to Sif's character motivations until about the 5th issue, and yeah, I think that could have potentially held the series back. I highly recommend this run of Journey into Mystery featuring the Lady Sif. It is an exceptional comic with exceptional artwork that got canceled way too soon. Thanks for joining me for this month's Comics Corner. I will be back next week to talk about... we're not talking about Loki in this comics. Well, I personally don't really feel I have a lot of Loki comics to Okay. I will make some Loki recommendations. Very, very quick Loki recommendations. Jeez, people, don't you have Tumblr to be browsing? Odin's beard. Like I said, after Loki died in the comics, the kid Loki was given his own run of the Journey into Mystery series. After Lady Sif became the main character of the Journey into Mystery series, Kid Loki went on to join the Young Avengers team. Now, I haven't finished either of these series. I've read a few issues of Journey into Mystery featuring Loki, and I've read a few issues of Young Avengers. And what I've read, I've really liked, and I do know that I'm going to be finishing both these series when I get the chance. If you're a fan of Tom Hiddleston's performance in the films, and, well, let's face it, who isn't a fan of Tom Hiddleston's performance in the films, then I actually recommend checking out Thor: The Dark World Prelude, the two-parter that Marvel put out as a tie-in to the most recent Thor film. This comic is actually meant to fill in some of the gaps between the first Thor film, The Avengers, and Thor: The Dark World. And, well, it doesn't really do that. It attempts to at times, but in such a non-committal way that if you had any burning questions you wanted answered, these comics will just disappoint you. Don't go in looking for answers. Just go in looking for pretty art, at least in the first issue, and for Loki. Yeah, these are mostly about Loki. I'm not even kidding, this splash page is the entire reason why I bought this comic. And of course for the Loki fans, because obviously Marvel knows who they're marketing this towards. In terms of comics and even just film tie-ins, there's definitely a lot better out there, but again, I really like the artwork in issue 1, and I found it really enjoyable. Thank you for joining me for this month's Comics Corner. Now I am off to go fight some bilge snipe and make a dramatic exit that-a-way. So until next time, for Asgard!